Last week in Michigan politics, as key races of every kind continue to run right through Michigan, we sat down with the state's top election official to talk election-related issues top of mind for many. Plus, a push to put more restrictions on students' cell phones in schools. Why the state lawmaker behind it says it's the right call. I'm Josh Albertus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. It was National Voter Registration Day last week, and we talked with the state's top election official leading up to November. We sat down with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who has been very vocal in asserting her belief that elections are secure amid concerns, even as her office has faced lawsuits over what some have alleged are things like bloated voter rolls that the state needs to get in check to comply with the law. We chatted with her about that and much more.
Even in a moment like this, and it's certainly going to get a lot noisier in Michigan over these next 7 weeks, that we take incredible pride in the safety, the accuracy, and the security of our elections, and we want voters to share in that pride.
I want to get your full perspective on that. Why is that in your view, and what do you feel is in place in the system that makes it so?
There are many records, many security layers to ensure that only valid citizens are able to vote in our elections. And so we want people to know about that. We want people to be a part of the process. And National Voter Registration Day is a great way to celebrate that, to actually celebrate being registered to vote and ensuring everyone you know is registered as well.
And kind of those topics of the rolls and the certification of votes have really just sprung up over the last few years in importance anyway. You know, when you went there to Congress, you faced a question about the voter rolls. How do you respond to concerns about potentially bloated rolls?
I understand people's questions and concerns and welcome those questions. That's why I was happy to testify before the Congressional Committee and offer a glimpse into how in Michigan we went from being ranked 32nd in the country when I took office to now being ranked second in the country, doing a mailing to everyone who is registered to make sure everyone is still in their places, or if they have moved, we can use that mailing to remove ineligible voters. We also now do more frequent checks with the Social Security Administration and other places where if someone passes away, we get that information more frequently and can update our rolls.
Why does that take time?
Well, if someone has passed away, we can remove them right away. But if someone has moved or just hasn't voted in a few years, we, under federal law, have to wait for 2 federal cycles for them to not vote in order to legally be able to remove them from the rolls. However, once we identify someone that we believe has moved, we mark them as inactive. That means essentially they are inactive and would have to, if they choose to reactivate as voters, they'd have to show ID and actually prove that their residency is still where they registered to vote long ago. And so once someone's on the inactive list, they're essentially on a countdown. And unless they vote in the next 2 federal cycles, they are removed. And in Michigan, we have hundreds of thousands of people who are inactive.
You know, the personal side. When you talked to Congress, you told Congress about the threats and the intimidation against you and your family and your workers as well. You know, given all of this that is happening, you know, when you are such a public face of this, our elections are secure, our elections have integrity, when you're such a public face of it, does that ever weigh on you at all, the potential fear that maybe this intimidation never went away for you, but that it may grow like it seemingly did in 2020?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm human. I'm also a mom, and I have to prepare my son for what the impact of these threats could mean to our family, and not just to me, to our staff as well. So that's very real. And we're in an era both of misinformation and an era of political violence. And there's a direct link between that misinformation around our elections and violence and threats to our election officials. It is an unfortunate reality of our work today, but it is one that has emboldened many of us to be even more committed to doing our jobs with professionalism and with pride.
And apparent threats against officials are far from limited to just one side of the aisle, as the FBI has continued to investigate what they believed to have been an apparent assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump late last weekend. Amid this, we spoke with a former Secret Service agent about his response to what happened and what could be done next. Authorities moving quickly on Monday after what the FBI has said appeared to be another assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump Sunday at his golf course in West Palm Beach. Trump taking to Truth Social Sunday night, thanking law enforcement for the response that kept him safe, writing in part, quote, "The job done was absolutely outstanding. I am very proud to be an American." While the possible motives of the suspect are still under investigation, condemnation of potential political violence has been swift.
It's horrific that that violence has become a more clear and present part of our political culture here in America. That's disgusting, and it's un-American, at least the way if Americans are doing our best.
Trump's challenger, Vice President Kamala Harris, put out a statement on social media that same day, saying in part, quote, "I am deeply disturbed by the possible assassination attempt of former President Trump today. As we gather the facts, I will be clear, I condemn political violence. We all must do our part to ensure that this incident does not lead to more violence." According to ABC News, President Joe Biden telling reporters on Monday that the Secret Service, quote, "needs more help." One local former Secret Service agent said things like private assets and leveraging technology could assist, given the circumstances.
I mean, I think it's going to have to be probably some creativity, right? It's really difficult to get people hired. Obviously, every law enforcement agency is dealing with kind of that struggle with retaining, attracting, retaining talent. Secret Service certainly is not immune to that. And then also the requirements and the difficulty of becoming an agent is, pretty significant.
Russell saying this time the system appears to have worked, but the events of the weekend, he said, likely will be followed by change.
So I think what you're going to see is on these maybe more predictable off-the-record movements, just a general increase, probably general increase in law enforcement presence overall.
And this week, the political spotlight on Michigan once again. Donald Trump held a town hall in Flint on Tuesday, while his running mate, J.D. Vance, was in West Michigan that same day. 13 on your side's Lauren Baker had the details on what Vance told a crowd in Sparta.
On Tuesday, Vice President candidate J.D. Vance made a stop once again in the battleground state of Michigan. He spoke heavily on the economy, saying Harris is to blame for young Americans not able to afford housing and groceries because of things like immigration.
She said we're going to suspend all deportations. We're going to decriminalize all illegal immigration, and we are going to stop Donald Trump's wildly successful Remain in Mexico policy. That flooded the United States with a ton of illegal immigrants, and you know what those illegal immigrants did? They compete with Americans for scarce homes.
He also claimed immigration has impacted the workforce here in Michigan.
Why have people left Michigan in the last 15, 20 years? Two things: high taxes and a lack of good jobs. So the idea that the solution to a lack of jobs is to import a lot more people who are going to compete with Michiganders for the jobs that are here. No, create more jobs. That's how you bring people back to Michigan.
Vance also spoke about the import of goods, energy, and vehicles from other countries, saying under Trump, they will create more jobs and increase wages by bringing manufacturing back to those sectors.
We got to get out of this mindset, the Kamala Harris mindset, that we can rely on other countries to make the things that we need. Kamala Harris is trying to make us buy more and more Chinese-made electric vehicles. This is the greatest auto-producing state in the whole country, which makes it the capital of the great American automobile. Let's buy more cars in Michigan.
Lauren Baker, 13 on your side.
And aside from a visit from a vice presidential candidate, Michigan also once again playing host to both major party candidates vying for the top spot. Coming up, the latest pitches to Michigan voters as Donald Trump and Kamala Harris hit the campaign trail in our state once again. On Tuesday, Donald Trump spoke at a town hall in Flint in his first public appearance since the apparent assassination attempt in West Palm Beach last Sunday. Thousands attended the event at the Dort Financial Center. He was joined by his former press secretary, current Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Trump talked about several topics, including the border, Michigan's auto industry, and the economy.
We're going to get interest rates down, and we got to work with our farmers. Our farmers are being decimated right now. They're being absolutely decimated. And, one of the reasons is we allow a lot of farm product into our country, and we're going to have to be a little bit like other countries. We're not going to allow so much we're going to let our farmers go to work.
This was Trump's first visit to Flint since 2016. And Vice President Kamala Harris was also in Michigan on Thursday for a streaming event. Harris joined Oprah, several Michigan politicians, and a live audience for the Unite for America event in Oakland County. She took questions from the audience on several topics, including the border, economy, and the housing market.
The way I think about it is, one, when people work hard and have a dream of buying a home, we should give you the opportunity to be able to do that, which is why part of my plan is for first-time homeowners, buyers, to have a $25,000 down payment assistance to buy your first home.
This event came just 2 days after those visits from Trump and Vance. A newly reinstated state law is set to raise the minimum wage for many tipped workers in the state, but many of them are not on board. Why workers from around the state traveled to Lansing this week to push back and what they want. That's next. At the state capitol, more than half of parents in a nationwide survey recently believe cell phones have had a negative impact on their children, especially those not yet in high school. The state legislature is trying once again to impose new restrictions on cell phone use in schools, including a ban in grades K through 5. Tim Skubick from our Lansing affiliate reports.
Back in the day, if parents needed to get in touch with their children during school hours, they simply called the school office. Not anymore. Parents are now in the midst of school shootings almost on a regular basis, and they're calling the children direct with their cell phones to make sure they're safe. Enter this debate Oakland County Republican Representative Mark Tisdale. He clearly understands the parental concern, but he explains the students are actually safer without that immediate contact in the middle of an active shooter on the prowl.
Parental response is certainly one of the concerns that you get, maybe even the first concern that you get from school administrators, principals. In an actual emergency, you want your child's attention focused on the trained adult that's at the head of the classroom. You don't want hundreds of parents showing up in their automobiles while first responders are trying to get to the location and do their jobs.
As for the students who seem to be glued to their devices on a daily basis, 27 Michigan school districts across the state have already imposed restrictions, and there's new legislation now on 3 levels. The Tisdale legislation would, 1, at grades K through 5, there would be no cells in schools at all. In grades 6 through 8, they could be used before and after school, and in grades 9 through 12, they would only be banned in the classroom. Teachers believe that restrictions will reduce cyberbullying and other mental health concerns, and students will get better grades, and discipline will be reduced, the representative says.
The school administrators tell us the greatest surprise is the schools are allowed again. Referrals to counselors, the mental health concerns have all dropped.
School boards that get parental pushback on all this can blame the legislature for the mandate. And the representative says if that's the price to pay, he'll take the blame to help the kids out.
I know in the long run, parents, teachers, administrators will appreciate this.
That's if he can get the votes to do it, perhaps sometime next year.
And a rally in Lansing Wednesday brought servers and bartenders from across the state to the steps of the state capitol. They came together to voice opposition to a newly reinstated law they say would raise menu prices and reduce their tips. 13 on Your Side's Micah Cho brought us the story from Lansing.
Yeah, one of the biggest fears from some of the tip workers we talked to is if minimum wage increases for them, then the amount of tips they'll receive will decrease because of rising costs. And that's why hundreds of them came out to the state capitol on Wednesday, a lot of them even taking off of work to be here. When it comes to tipping and a lower base wage, hundreds of servers, bartenders, and others in the restaurant industry gathered on the front lawn of the state capitol to voice their concerns.
I work for my tips. I do what I can.
Right now, base pay for tipped workers is 38% of Michigan's minimum wage, or $3.93 an hour, with tips making up the rest. However, a recent ruling from the Michigan Supreme Court will raise the state's minimum wage to $12 an hour and will do away with the state's tip credit by 2029, meaning the rule that minimum wage can make up 38% of general minimum wage will be thrown out. They'll eventually be making $15 an hour by 2029. Republican Michigan State Senator Thomas Albert introduced a bill last week to combat that ruling. The bill would continue to raise Michigan's minimum wage, but keep the 38% tip credit.
We let this new law go into effect next February. You're going to see changes. I mean, especially at the restaurants, you're going to see cost of the food's going to go up.
And if we wanted a better wage, we would go out and totally get a different career.
Yeah.
But we work hard for what we do, and we deserve to be able to keep our tips. I've been in the hospital, I've been a nurse, I've been a lab tech. I mean, I've been all over. I just come back because number one is it's great money, and number two, I get to be with my kids at the end of the day.
As it stands right now, that minimum wage hike for tipped workers will take effect in February. In Lansing, Micah Cho, 13 on your side.
The Canada goose. It's a bird that seems to be just about everywhere as you get close to the water. And for many years, the state of Michigan had a program meant to relocate the geese that caused health-related and other concerns. But now they're saying that's no longer an option. When we come back, why the state says they're turning to euthanasia and how they're responding to pushback. Michigan's Department of Natural Resources is focusing on a new strategy as part of their long-running Canada Goose Management Program. Beginning in 2025, the DNR will no longer relocate Canada geese when other methods of management have failed. Instead, the birds that are rounded up will be euthanized. We're told this was already an option available in the program. We're also told the new policy is a last resort, and the DNR is working to craft a program that addresses concerns that they've heard regarding euthanizing these animals. It will only be used when non-lethal harassment methods and nest destruction don't work in removing birds from requested areas. The DNR says that they ended relocation due to factors like their population size of the birds and potential health hazards.
There's Canada geese already throughout the entire state, so we really didn't want to be in a situation where we were potentially just moving the conflicts from one area to another. But the bigger concern was highly pathogenic avian influenza, or bird flu.
The DNR is worried that relocation can spread the virus to other parts of the state and possibly infect other species. Read about all of the changes to the state's Canada Goose policy at 13onyourside.com. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.